Yeah, but there's no problem. Hi, everybody. I've been going online and I'm under very strict time conditions today, partly self-imposed, partly also because we've got a little bit to walk through. It's been great coming this morning and meet new members, for me, our new members of council, and it's going to come a long way. So thank you for coming to start rather than come today.
Just a quick one, if I can, through the chair. We can't hear you. It just off and on.
It's on, Terry. I can hear you, which is
you're sort of breaking up, going off and on. I wonder if
can
you
you
can
hear me now,
move the
Terry?
mic just a little bit closer.
You want this one? We've got issues.
You can't hear me now, Terry, or is
Is it everybody or just Terry?
Bunch of cats, actually 10% off the month.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
My time is sort of gone out now.
I think we have trouble with the
That, Terry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better, Bruce. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, because I was just constitute meeting, welcome everybody. It's great to be here. And I was just saying, as Annie tells me, any rain that you get is above normal now. And I came across the Harriet Plains this morning, and it's certainly pretty wet. So hope everything is good for the district today, even though it's wet. So welcome everybody, and it's tremendous to be here. Just to acknowledge the hard work put in by particularly Paku this morning to get us today. We realised that we had originally intended to get a workshop this afternoon, and I think my personal apology because it's my personal training I'll be here this afternoon, and we will pursue that. I have gone through Paku's work and it's really good, and I'm very keen that I remedy that situation with you soon so that we can have a proper look at our overall risk profile. So thank you, Paku, and apologies today, but we'll look to pick up your good work a wee bit later in the year. So I do appreciate that. It does mean though that when we get to midday, we propose to have completed this part of the meeting, have a short break for lunch, and we do have Andrew Michael from the local government funding agency, which I think would be important to meet with Andrew, as most councils do occasionally, given our role to be concerned about financial risk. But this is the man that funds us, so we should be pretty healthy and welcome reception as well. So with that, I'd like to move on the agenda, please. Many apologies. I think everybody's virtually here. Terry, I can see you. Gary, I understand you're there as well. I think we've got no apologies as a result. People can stay for the morning.
I just have to put 10, but I'm back.
Okay, well, we make the point.
I was warning you.
Yeah. I haven't been informed of any public forum. And there are no items, sorry, I haven't been told of items that need to be pulled forward onto the agenda. At this stage, are there any matters that are in the papers that give rise to concerns about your interests? Good. Anything I didn't talk about later?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just please note that there is amendment to wording and resolutions for item 3.2, page 65 and 4.88. References to audit and risk committee, and that should be risk and assurance committee.
Send you the correctional training for that one. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for that. That's great. So minutes of our last meeting. I'll move from the chair that we accept them as a true report. Are there matters of accuracy or completeness that anybody needs to raise over those?
I've just got one, if I can, through the chair, Bruce.
Here you go for Terry.
Yeah, there was a request, 2.1, page 5. The chair requested a risk workshop to be discussed. I just wonder if that has been considered. In 2.2, the diversion in the assurance area, staff were to relook at this work program. Just asking about those things. Are we going to have a discussion about them, or were they addressed? That's all.
Kerry, I tried to indicate that the workshop we had planned for today has been deferred at my request because of my personal, engagements. Sorry, this afternoon, my, 2.2 was actually a follow-up what I was going to ask, which, there was an action item there, indeed, there is on 2.3. I just wondered whether there was any feedback on that. But we, so 2.2 was, we're talking about, on the insurance report part, I don't know whether Monday new staff were asked to consider recommendations to the committee in the next report to approve changes to the insurance work program based on the current environment. I think that's covered, isn't it? So that's okay. The chair requested an update on the next report to include the current situation and its potential impact on staff. And I think we'll cover that off when we get to that item, Terry. So I'm comfortable the action has been followed up. Any other
Thank you.
points spoken? Any other folks?
No, that's all, thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion in that we set this through record all those in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry, do we have a second? Thank you, Lee. I'll put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Well, Parker, can I invite you to the table and take us through actually a series of reports, including we'll start the report first, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick, for those that don't know me. And I manage the risk and insurance team here at DC. So here we are. Through the chair, in terms of the risk report, so no deep dive was undertaken for this reporting period. We've been preparing for the risk workshop and strategic risks need review. So given where we're at in terms of our current context, this is you held off on doing any further work in regards to our strategic risks. Just noting that the cybersecurity strategic risk is now part of that list, and that will remain as such, given that it's prevalent and it's a big risk for all organisations. So that will stay. In terms of our risk improvement plan, we have kicked off operational risk workshops. This is one of our objectives in terms of raising our culture, our risk culture across the organisation. So if you think strategic risks is what we work with you around at an operational level. This is where the rubber hits the ground sort of stuff. This is where I need to get in, work with our teams in terms of their processes and make sure that they understand the risks to their specific areas of control. It's about increasing our staff understanding of operational risks. We've used the workshop processes to educate our staff on what good risk management looks like. And one of the surprising things that I've found through the process is that our staff actually do intuitively know what those risks are, but what they haven't done is formalise them in a way that they can understand them, and they can follow through with how do I then manage those risks, and what are our priorities in terms of managing a whole host of risks that sit within their operations. So that's been a great learning for staff that I've undertaken them with. So that's really it. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Patrick, and tremendous to hear the work that you're doing with staff. I agree entirely that I think as we, I would certainly probably want to build on that as we come out of, I know it's today, but our proposed risk workshop, we can perhaps greater discussion with you about actually how you're working this through the staff. I don't doubt that you've got the information on here that's really superb. So I guess that sense of risk, I mean, our work in risk governance, but staff's role in risk management is actually working through the place, which is superb. Okay, the questions for Parker is on the report here.
Just
You think
one, if I may, Parker, you could put into this. I wonder if you could just and it might sound like a stupid question, just give us a little bit of an understanding of how the ratings that you've got, risk, target risk, and the numbers. Can you just give us a view of how that's going to help us?
Yes, so part of the, I sent a risk booklet out to you all, but they have got, we have a risk matrix that we assess the risk against. And in terms of, based on our knowledge of the risk and what controls we've got in place to manage that risk, we then decide based on the consequences as such within that risk booklet where it kind of sits. We also look at, well, how often might this risk actually happen, or when, you know, what is the, I guess, it's around, you know, will it happen in a year? Will it happen in a month? So then we sort of add those two together, those two conditions together to kind of get that kind of risk. Now, in terms of the target risk, this is a risk where ideally, if we had everything in place and under control, this is the target that we're aiming for. Now, we need to be a bit careful around target risk because in some instances, some risks you can't get to a low score. So one of those examples is health and safety. And in terms of health and safety, it relies on people factor. So you can't control what a person is going to do in terms of maintaining their health and safety. So target risk might not necessarily be a low. So and that's how we come up with those values. So yes, an assessment is carried out.
Yes, Peter. On page 16, we talk about strategic risk action status update. There has been no change since the last reporting period. So there's been no change in what?
What that means is that those actions are still underway.
Okay.
So,
and with regards to these risks, are we measuring or monitoring the trend or this risk is improving, or are we reporting on that?
yes, so through this process, we'd be reporting. So if we get those actions down, then we'd obviously reduce the level of risk and we'd report that in this report.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So that's going to be dependent on getting
The actions completed.
Okay. Thank you.
I wonder, I'll put it as an observation, Park, you'd be welcome to either correct or to counter or whatever what I say. But Peter, one of the interesting points here, and I think the target risk is actually really important. Because that ultimately, and this will be the workshop, is something that this committee on behalf of council will determine. It's called risk appetite. So at the moment, if I was to go to page 15, which has the summary, albeit I want to just acknowledge the status updates in terms of process. You take it doesn't matter which one we take, but I'll take the first one, staff recruitment and retention, which is, by the way, a common big risk for vice councillors around the country. At this stage, we've got a moderate risk here at 15. But our target or our risk appetite is actually low. What that actually is signalling is we should be asking, and we can go to the status update of Aileen and the team. So what are we doing? Because we are outside our comfort zone in terms of it. So it's actually a powerful message that we would expect effort and resources and controls to be put into this area. So that's the power of actually what Parku's prepared for us in those status updates. That's why, by the way, I keep apologising for, that's why our workshop will be valuable to A, revalidate and both what are our risks and secondly, what is our risk appetite, which is where Parku was taking us, and he's got different papers for that. So there's a sense here, the bite here is that we are, while, and I'm comfortable that the risk profile Parku is relatively stable, if I can put it that way, relative compared to the last meeting, so the trend is that it's relatively stable. The important part of this report is actually we aren't a green or a yellow, depending on where the risk appetites have noted to take the point about. So it's actually the point of this particular part of the meeting is, are you comfortable with the position we're in and the actions that management are taking? That's a sharp edge by the way of this meeting, and in a collegial sense, we're holding each other to account. Are we happy with the position we're in? But would you counter correct or change that if you want to? That's
Through the chair, that's correct. What you don't see here, that's a summary. So what you don't see are the actual actions through this report. And so when I do a deep dive, then that comes to bring us the actions up and so you get greater understanding of what we're actually doing within to get that risk down. Having said that, you touched on the staff recruitment and retention. So that definitely needs to be reviewed in light of once we've got a new P&C manager on board. So I need to go through that with her and see what she's got, pictured for going forward.
So I wonder if I could just hold it there and perhaps we could introduce Lisa, seeing you mentioned a new manager, it's great to have somebody around. So I wonder if we
Yes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lisa Piper, who's joined us this week and added value in the first 2 hours on board. So Lisa comes to us with manager qualifications, legal qualifications and HR qualifications, and has worked in some of the big companies and has got some local government background as well. So really pleased to have Lisa on board, and it's only day 4, so we won't pass over for her to respond to. Yeah, so pretty pleased about that.
Well, welcome on board, Lisa. And you can see that Parkview quite like prioritise their strategic risks, then you skip into the hot ones. So, not looking future, I would be very keen to do that, not only for Parkview, but where I said that was going on. I suspect that's what we have to call you on this one, Lisa, that we're able to hear from as time goes on. So welcome to the meeting and welcome to the community as well. Yes, Mark.
So I'm not trying to be longer or anything, but bottom page 15, started page 16, it's a bit around austerity and affordability. And it says the likely impact of loss of income from the Three Waters reform is unknown and on PCDC's future delivery of services. Assuming that means the impact of the Three Waters reform is also unknown on the future delivery of its service.
It does. And I think that we do need to review all of these strategic risks anyway. So whether it's still maintained in this area or whether we change the of that fiscal, the statement of that risk.
I just like more to read very well. Sorry.
But we've got an opportunity to relook at that.
Through the chair, but Martin stolen my question to some, thank you, Martin. But I'm deeply aware as we work through this process in the business of council of the difference between things that we have some level of control over and the other items over which we are so far removed from control that in my mind it presents a whole other level of risk that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So how do you assess that? How do you get past that challenge?
Well, I mean, it's actually about reporting it and within the assessments that we undertake. That's all we can do. There are parts of a risk where you can't control it, but you can influence, I guess, at another level. But certainly the assessment will have all of that written into that assessment, and that will be tabled at in this forum. Yes, it's just one of those things that we have to actually just highlight and make sure that it's an assessment, the deep and that we're clear about that.
None of us know.
I think one of the things I'd contribute, Leanne, is that actually the big risks we face often fall into that bracket of very difficult control. unlike, just say, operational control, risks which you clearly deal with management, some of these are really tough nuts to actually crack. So even cybersecurity is one which, while I was at a meeting yesterday where it's a city that has millions of attacks every month, millions. Which is constant. Now, we can't control that. So what do you need to have? You need to have a couple of things. One, good controls over what you can manage. So we spend resources to, as I'm sure we do here as well, resources to have the defensive that you can buy within your budget. And you have metrics that tell you actually how big is this threat. And this means responding as well as we can, but we can't stop attacks. It is going to happen. Same with response to a disaster, which you guys are better at. You can't control what's going to come out of the sky or whatever, but it's actually a question of what's our antennae for the red flags, and in terms of the mitigating controls, if we've got those in place.
Through the chair, I would also, in terms of that comment, when I'm undertaking risk assessments with the staff across the organisation, I talk about two things: the circle of control and circle of influence. And so what are the things in terms of risk management? What are the things that they can control? What are the things they can influence? And then knowing what those are is really important in terms of risk management. Yeah.
Yes, Debbie.
Thank you for your report, which was actually really readable. So thank you for that. I always appreciate having some visual information to assist with understanding. And on reflecting on your work, it also reminded me that this doesn't exist in a silo, and that CE KPIs and budget lines, Donna, all fall out of this work. And for myself, I think it's important to have that awareness of how this is a bit like an octopus, and that actually sort of the tentacles go into those other bodies of work that we need to look at. So yes, thank you for this report.
Yeah, well, any other questions? I just think my final one, Paku, is if I could just draw our attention to the bottom of page 16, top of page 17, in terms of the actions, the summary of actions for the strategic risks. Are you comfortable with where we're at as far as that's concerned? That's a loaded question, I know, but I wonder if you could give an indication about really direction of travel on these, because these are, to the extent that I understand it, implementing controls that give us greater confidence. And so I'm keen to see them move on, if I can put it that way.
Yes, through the chair, I am comfortable with where they're at. What I would like to do though is review all of these strategic risks just to make sure that we have captured everything, all the actions that we need to capture. So yes, I am, but I still think we need to review them and make sure that we've captured everything that we can possibly do.
Yeah, I do understand. I mean, I know that Bruce isn't here, and what would be directly his area, but I can't help but get past the poor asset management and the three actions that are needed and coming up to the LPP. And I'm hoping that none of the three actions relate to the quality of what we will have in the way of information for the LPP.
Through the chair, I can speak to that actually.
So great, yes, please.
Yes, so, in terms of that, these are the actions that we've got here around process improvements, and in terms of the systems that we've got coming up that we're looking at to manage them. So at this point in time, it's about just making sure that the process, there are linkages between the system and the processes. And in saying that, I'm reasonably comfortable that they sit outside the validity of the information or the asset of information that's gone into the GP and stuff. So these are improvement type, process improvement type actions, I guess.
Yes, Mark.
So in appendix 2, the strategic risk status update, first one is staff recruitment and retention. And I realise that we're not even, getting close to halfway through 2023. Have we got any indicative idea about what our what our average turnover rates might be?
Yes, we do. I couldn't give you numbers, but I do know that the trend is downwards. We have this rolling average thing that we monitor each month, and it's definitely heading in the right direction. We're doing some good recruitments. And there's two things there. One, it would be nice to go, we're doing better, but I think the reality is the market's changing as well. So probably a combination of both.
It probably is in the right place, by the way. Find most councils around the country with almost it's the top, the topest. It tends to be, it tends to be in key areas rather than generality. So that becomes the issue.
Can I just, like to direct this to Aileen if possible? The staff retention and recruitment, how much is accommodation and availability of housing in different parts of the district? Is that a factor? Has that changed? Is that improved? Or is that still something I'm concerned?
Hard to answer. I haven't seen it be I mean, certainly difficult, and I've experienced that myself, but I don't think that's the major impediment. And happy to speak to what I think the major impediment is. And I think it's actually reputation in the sector. So we've had the roles we're struggling to recruit for are the professional roles we're looking into the local government sector to recruit for. And I think there's a long-standing legacy issue there with the sector not seeing us as a good place to come and work. So we've been doing some initiatives to try and change that, which if anyone's on LinkedIn, you'll see some of those. And you'll see the award that we got last week. That's very much about aiming into the sector to say, hey, actually, we're a really cool place to work sector, because we do really great communications with our community, but we seem to have neglected the local government magazines, for example, where actually the folk that we're looking to recruit are actually paying attention.
Thank you.
It's very helpful.
Any other questions? We want to keep moving on, if that's okay, otherwise. Barky, thank you for that.
I repeat those comments. It's actually great to see it. Actually almost already, and
So I always look at diagram rather than words, so that's tremendous. So thank you for that. We just move to the recommendation that we do receive package, which will over mover and a second. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, John. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carry. Thanks, Barky. Let's keep on with the
Through the chair, in regards to assurance. I was tasked with reviewing the audit plan. We'd unable to deliver on last year's plan, so I have provided a revised audit plan. Now, listen, the plans, the key focus areas here are around fraud, and they are around they're around fraud. They are typically legislative obligations and our ability to deliver on our LTP. These are key kind of things that we have considered in terms of reviewing this plan. And I'm happy to talk about the focus areas for each of those reviews if you would like, or if you would like to delve into any one of those. In terms of the assurance piece, the process development and improvement piece that we also provide, we have progressed a number of key operational policies that actually weren't in place, but also reviewing policies. So our fraud policy, we've reviewed in line with the Office of the Auditor General. That's important. We have a new CCTV policy that is under reviewing, but still in draft. And also, I have developed a contract management policy, which is new. There's a couple of tweaks there, but it's basically across the line now. this is a really important document in terms of supporting our staff to manage our contracts effectively. Often we look at the procurement life cycle and people understand procurement, but the contract management part drops off and is of less importance. And my idea around this contract management policy was to lift the importance of actually, once something is procured, that actually we do manage the contract in terms of performance and review of that contract and all of the things that our contract managers need to do in order to make sure that we're getting value for money and that we're making sure that we're getting quality service from our contractors. But that's, you know, from my perspective, it's a significant piece of work because it's the basis for making sure that we, you can have all the systems in place, but actually having a policy and some guide staff is really important. I think that's really it for this report. So
Thanks, Paku. And again, thank you very much for the information. Paku, questions? Paku, Terry quite rightly drew us to the attention of page 26. We've got a total there of the proposed program. Just one bit of clarification before I open up the integrity review. We've got November, March 2023. I presume that's 2024. The table. Or is it past?
oh, yes, no, it's 2024. You're correct.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for questions or comments for Patrick. This is the regulatory part. We talked about risk and controls. This is a chance for us to see the control actually work. So it's the flip side of the coin. Comments? Yeah, Glenn.
Like the CCTV policy, if you just give us an overview, is that relating to CCTV units that are in communities like Whangamata, Thames to a degree, and the plans to go up and look at CCTV cameras and other animals?
It's an overall policy. It's about, the policy really is about understanding that CCTV we've got in place, what we've suggested assets, types of CCTV, but also where you need to go to get advice around what is the best application in terms of specifics. So, for example, if it's a road that you're wanting to kind of target, the rationale behind having CCTV at that road point or at a shop or whatever. So it's about making sure that, you know, giving guidance around ensuring that the police are involved and having that sort of backup data to kind of support the need for whatever application that's put in place.
So does it go as deep as operations and
Yes,
get
absolutely.
into those details?
Absolutely. Yes.
So if the town is looking at, like Whitianga, for example, looking at CCTV cameras, that's a place to start in terms of these are the guideline frameworks, it's the policy that we need to work with, because it's been a bit of a grey area, I think, hasn't it?
Certainly from a legislative perspective, you know, in terms of privacy with those things, yeah, it's important. And simple thing like making sure that people are aware that CCTV camera is operating in the area and having that pointed out.
May I ask a question? So actually also on CCTV cameras, what's the time frame? You've said it's in draft form and it's being reviewed. What is the time frame, do you think, for that to be completed?
I'm looking towards the next couple of months. So basically, I went out to our regional manager, Ben, we're aware of Dan, just to make sure that he was happy with the policy, because at the end of the day, it's his communities that are affected. So just there's some tweaks that he wants me to consider that policy.
Yes, Peter.
Okay, thanks for your comments about contract management, procurement. What reports we will, when you've completed this, what reports would we expect to see that would give us the confidence that our contracts are being properly managed?
That's interesting. I, look, in terms of, from my perspective, I'm putting in place the policy, and obviously I will at some point in time go back through. So with this policy, there is a soft launch, okay? So that's the first step that we're going to take. And that's about ensuring that the right people in the organisation know what policy is and what it means to them. Secondly, what I can do is go back through and undertake an internal initial review, and that would cover all some of that stuff. Other than that, I'm imagining that they report their contracts through to their operation, through to the senior leadership team in regards to so contract managers would report through to their senior leaders in terms of its operating and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, complex question, because there's different ways of looking at it. So like we're putting in place the framework that people need to operate to, but then there's how do we audit to make sure people are actually following the framework? And then there's questions around if they may well have a policy in place, they may well be following the framework, but there may still be inefficiencies in the system. So I point to the 17A review around the roading. That's the intention there, is to have that more the efficiency side of it. And our major contracts will come up for a big review ahead of going out to the market to replace the big contracts. So it really depends what they mean by.
Well, I guess I'm thinking of what's happened historically, where we seem to have tripped over when a contract appeared to not be, or was it alleged not to have been managed properly. So it would be good to get early warnings of that something.
Agree. And an option there would be to actually put a project in place that actually asks that question and dives into it and has a look in places you may be concerned.
I was coming from a risk governance perspective, which is what we are, and Park has actually given us included the answer, which is actually our role is this is an area of risk, and it's come up partly because Carl, our auditor, has raised it, correct, but also because clearly we heavily invested through a long-term delivery of services. So logically, a question that we should ask ourselves is actually, what is our procurement, project management and contract management like? And that would be a very reasonable question for this committee, let alone for you as a whole council to ask. So it would be, there could be at one point, not only do we have a policy, but actually how is that policy how do we know that actually the soft launch has worked with people and we've got a process that's going? So that actually becomes really important with actually the point that Parku has met our needs on. What is it going to do in terms of assurance? So Parku's actually our eyes, as a committee, our eyes and ears into the organisation, because as an internal auditor, he is semi-independent of management. That's the important role. He has a level of semi-independence to report direct to us. That's again, I talk about the sharp edge, but that's the benefit of a risk committee. We've got partners in a sense working for us. So it comes then back to the program. Do we expect them to do some work for us around this area if we think it's key? So that's the formal risk governance way in which we could tackle this issue. I would want to also say that clearly, as a council, presumably you have, sorry, Aileen and Len, I've forgotten your committee structure, either through the Works Committee or Equipment Operations Committee, or indeed just full council. You'll also be monitoring the delivery on the long-term plan, the annual plan. You've got your eyes and ears out in the community about whether projects, etc., are being delivered. So you've got to bring all of that together to try and understand this. But at the heart of it, there is a potential role for us to work with Parku if we see this as being a big area of concern. Risk is a better word rather than concern, because it is Yeah.
Sorry, Parker, you might have a point, then got John.
Through the chair, just following on from your comment, I have known that there's a procurement and contract management review scheduled for the 2024-25 year. And I'm quite happy to bring that forward, actually, if that's, if that's a concern area. So a more steer on that, so.
But I would think that what I was going to say, sorry, John, I know you.
No, you're right. You go for it.
What I say is actually that's good timing. Because actually you're developing the policy now, you're about to do your soft launch, if I've got it correct, on page 27. So we would expect to see the fruits of that good work coming through next year. So I'd say your time was absolutely spot on. But having said that, that's one which I would perhaps invite you to come back to us this side of Christmas with what is your plan scope. But I think there probably are broader questions that we as a governing group may have, possibly to start it, which would just be helpful for you to be able to include in your review. But that to me seems to be like good timing. So I accept that, John. I took over you, sorry.
No, you're right, Bruce. Hey, look, I endorse totally what Peter was saying before. And it's a really, you've got to be careful because there's quite an overlap between governance and operations here, operational stuff. But to me, one of the risks we carry is the delivery of our contracts and making sure we are getting value for money. And I've spoken to you, Aileen, on a couple of occasions, and I do see that as a big risk for this council. And it would be reassuring for the councillors to know that the contracts were the best they could be, and that we were getting good value for our dollars. And that comes into the operational side of things a little bit, Aileen, I know, but that would be a great thing for us to get. So yeah, I like the train of thought, Peter. I'd like to see us delve deeper into that somehow without getting into the operational side of things, Aileen.
So I don't think, yes, there's a line there, but there's a valid governance role there.
Yeah, there is.
There is, and that's what the 17A review on the roading is all about. That's one of the things that the two councils that have been allocated to that need to be looking at.
Yeah.
And then that will come to council for some decisions. It's never as simple as is it efficient or is it? There's lots of areas of grey and nuance in there and sort of other things to consider as well as the efficiency side of things.
Yeah.
That's absolutely a governance question.
Yeah.
So I'd really endorse the 17A process, and the council should be looking at that really closely to decide whether they feel those are the right answers that are coming through.
Good.
The other thing I'd also just raise, yes, there's the efficiency question and so on, but there's also the overlay of health and safety and monitoring and how that's all happening.
Yeah.
And that's something that the audit can have a look at. And we have Will sitting here as our health and safety officer, and we can see specialist reviews and have a look, for example, at the health and safety layer as well.
Mm. Peter, you can.
And so just clarifying, Bruce, your suggestion before about going back to corporate, is that going to happen now? Is that?
Well, I'm inviting the set. It's not a way of saying I'm asking.
Yep.
But I think there's a couple of things here. One is Parku quite correctly has got this as on his plan for next year, and I think just like take the temperature of the meeting. Yes, please, we want that.
Mm.
And really, what I'm saying here, Peter, is it is a big project. It covers a big part of our operation. So to have an open discussion with Parku about the scope in terms of reference, or indeed the way that Aileen said that actually it's so big, there are other parts that we think about how do we get assurance. So Will's work around, for instance, health and safety, which is an important part of contract management, may well be the sort of thing that actually through health and safety, we make certain, it's the combined PCDU, it's it's the systems we have in place around our health and safety, inspections of our contractors, our own staff, that all comes together in terms of do we manage a contract well. So to be honest, to have a session where we just work it out, I'm really saying, can you think about that, please, Parker? But that we work through what is the scope of that sense. So does that make sense, Peter?
Yeah.
So really just saying, I'm not gonna pass the motion because I sense Parker's got good ears. He knows that we'll be looking for a meeting, probably the last meeting of the year that actually we could go through that. So we've got this lined up for the new year. And by that stage, we'll also know that I take it that you've done what you plan to do on page 17, which is that launch of a policy, development of expectations, so that when you go and you're going to be able to expect to see controls. Right. Yes, John.
I might as well go again.
Yeah.
Just moving on, just looking at the fraud, so on page 8 a minute ago. Yeah, on page 28, the fraud that they're parking, reducing effort using an alternative system to remove duplication. So what does that mean? And does it cover? It would obviously cover internal fraud. Does it cover external fraud as well? Like fraud being brought in. Thinking of specifically councils down the west coast there, I think they had some quite large fraud inflicted on them from an external source. Do we ever cover that?
Yes, so through the chair, in terms of utilising alternative systems to remove duplication, this is more about using ITIS systems to pick up on fraud. So that's the first question.
Yeah.
In terms of that. Rather than control points like controls where someone needs to sign something, or we're using the systems, the IT systems, to actually detect and pull anything up that's that we need to review or check.
Yeah.
So that's around that. And what was the second question?
Yeah. The fraud policy, does it also deal with external agencies inflicting fraud on the organisation, or is it just purely internal fraud that policy relates to?
So this,
if we detect,
through the chair, this is around internal.
just internal.
Yeah, this is around our own internal that occurs within the organisation.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I hear your point. The West Coast one was the Cape business that wanted to build.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of, Bruce. And while there was an internal component there was certainly, yeah.
Well, I think the point that I want to argue, it's not an argument case, but I want to comment on, John, is going back to your program description here and you talk about the lens of fraud, legislative obligations, and ability to deliver. They go through all of those. So when you do the procurement work in November to March 2025, not 25, I would be expecting that from a procurement perspective, we would have a fraud lens.
Yeah.
Unless, well, it would be complementary or a bolt-on to that piece of work. We're looking at a procurement process, but you would also have an eye. How do we know that we aren't subject?
You actually put it better than I did. That's what I wanted.
Yeah. Look at that.
Do we have a lens on that?
Now, and here, John, just so that we are helping Parker with his prioritisation. He will do that. We've got a program project management review. I think it's November to March 2025, not 2024, isn't it? Again, so we would have challenged here on the dates. But that's the timing that we would expect. So what I'm hearing is on this, you've got the integrity review, which actually really has a very strong element about fraud prevention, etc. And then you can see that in the coming 24 year in particular, later in 25, we've got a strong focus around actually our ability to deliver through procurement and contract management. I think that's a really good sort of feel given by that stage with the deal. Yeah, given how they're going to deliver. Okay, look, I'm conscious of my time, guys. Are there any other questions that folk would like to raise here? So we've got some parking, what are you going to do? Feels like it's pretty much in there. Then you're
Just one quick one, if I may. Section 17A roading. Can I just get a timeline on that, by when that's likely to get to the end, and also what other 17As that are involved? Sorry if it's probably my.
Yeah, okay, so voting is underway. The next would have been, oh, here's Bruce, look, he's online.
Hey, Bruce.
The Three Waters changes have sort of knocked us a little bit astray, but now seems a good time, Bruce, to just fill pipe in on the Three Waters proposal.
Yes, Morena, everyone. So on the Three Waters, obviously with the changes and the reset that the government's done, pushing things out effectively by 2 years, our contract with Veolia ends on the 31st of March 2025. So initially when it was when operations were transferred to the water entity in 2024, that wasn't a problem. That contract would have carried across to the water entities and then they would have absorbed that in at the appropriate time. But obviously with that push out, we're going to have to relook at our operations and see how we manage to keep things going. So my suggestion on that is we wait a little bit until later on this calendar year before we make a decision on what we need to do. Just get a bit of a read on the political landscape if we can. And then the suggestion would be if everything's staying 2026, 1st of July, moving across to the water entities, then we'd look to probably do like a 1-year extension to our current Veolia contract. And obviously we'd bring that back through council. And obviously we'd have to work with DIA to make sure they were comfortable with that. So that would be how we'd maintain continuity of service through water services.
So Bruce, other 17A reviews, we don't really have any on the books, but we can put them on the books if we need to.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're correct. So we've obviously got the roading one, and I think we're targeting, obviously Mo's been away, so Mo's leading that. So I think what we're looking at there is maybe coming back to council with a workshop in August. I think we're targeting August, September for that. To carry on that process, but yeah, there's no others on the horizon at the moment, just based on those contract timelines, as you say, Aileen. But again, yep, as you correctly say, we can do any of those at any time if council so chooses.
So, sorry, through Chair Bruce, I guess the only other big one would be Parks and Resorts, and that's not too, because it's fairly new.
Yeah, correct. Through the chair, we did do a Section 17A review before we went back out to the market for the contract that's now held by Rec Services. And yeah, I can't recall just at the moment off the top of my head what the contract term is, but there is a reasonable period still to go on that one, particularly if you include the extensions, if they're successful in gaining those. So yeah, so that one's not on the horizon in the short term.
Thank you, Bruce.
Right, and obviously with roading being a piece of certainly the residual infrastructure you'll have, Bruce, as you say, it's about Three Waters, but I suspect you're alluding to what comes out of the elections at some stage between now and October in terms of water. I would presume also as part of the new entity that you'll form part of, that discussion around contracts, existing contracts, how you get yourselves through to the transition would be another part to that consideration, rather than just a straight formal 17A review.
Correct.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for that, Christian Lee. Appreciate that. So we've got a motion to find it first from Paku, which is that we received the report and we approved the 2-year internal water plan, which we've discussed at some length. Go ahead and move in the second step, please. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Lee. Discussion on the motion. If none, I'll put it below. So please say aye.
Aye.
Again, since carried, brilliant. Health and safety, thanks, Paku, and Will, you're welcome to come over too if you would like to. Like you're needed, so that's fine.
As the tables are, health and safety. They are indeed, yeah. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'd just like to introduce Will Roberts to anybody that hasn't. Will started must be a couple of months ago, and in that time he's made some significant impact on supporting our health and safety and well-being at TCDC. I can say that Will is connected with all of our external support partners, and this is in regards to the Police, WorkSafe and our Regional Health and Safety Forum. He's introduced new policies, he's built relationships with our leaders and our staff. And look, he's provided some great insight using his prior experiences in his long history of health and safety. So I'm really thrilled that he's come on board. So in terms of the health and safety report, we'll answer any questions in regards to that. So, yes. Please read.
Thank you. I think probably before I open up, is there anything you'd like to add or keep on?
Yeah, I'd love to know who this person back was talking about. Sounds like a break.
Gonna be you, mate. Right, thank you for that. Any questions folk would have for Will Parker on the health and safety report? I just wonder, it might be unfair, Will, to ask you this, but I'm going to ask and say, you've got the benefit of obviously a couple of months under your belt, your fresh set of eyes. Are you comfortable with the direction of travel from our systems and processes, the culture and awareness of health and safety within the organisation?
Through the chair, I believe now that we're on a journey to take us forward to give good representation in regards to health and safety for a council, for an entity. There's probably a long way to go in regards to how we break things down and build those relationships through. And if I may touch on the comments earlier in regard to and such, I put in place I devised an audit process where we go out and audit some of these people, Viola being one of them, of course. And we just had to stop that for now because we're not simply mature enough in our systems to allow us to progress that forward. But overarching, it's important to understand that health and safety is a journey. And it's a journey not just for me, it's a journey for everybody. So we're definitely heading most certainly in the right direction. And you guys start in maybe 3 months, 4 months down the line, I'll probably be able to give you a much more informative answer. But yeah, we're definitely heading the right way. I hope that's not too much of an evasive answer. I'm certainly not a politician, so.
Well, look, it's sobering actually, to be honest. And, you know, we can't create an audit because we're not sure enough to actually says something about your sense of our state. As duty holders, I ask that question because we're all duty holders and Aileen's got a bit more than being a duty holder around the organisation. We need to be happy that there are systems and processes in place. So I wonder, again, this is an invitation, because I don't know whether I've quite, when I say I've quite about to hear, it's because I haven't asked the question, but do you have a roadmap of where you are taking us on a health and safety? Talk about it's a journey. Are you able to characterise, I mean, not now, but I'm inviting to come back to the next meeting. What's the roadmap for improvement?
To answer the first aspect of your question through the chair, of course, yes, I do have a roadmap of planning where we're going to go. That's strategically based through both the council objectives, naturally, and a health and safety objective from my observations. Can I produce it at a later time? Most certainly, yes. I don't have it with me on the side.
I appreciate that.
Can't give you the information you need. But I can say that throughout the leadership of the council, there is nothing but positive feedback. Everybody's completely engaged. We all see, I mean, I have a strange saying, I've got many strange ones being a Yorkshireman, but one of the strange ones I've got is that for success, for everything to succeed, both or everybody has to look at across the ocean in the same direction. And I think the leadership team, the council, and everybody is looking across the ocean in the same direction. And I think it's just now a journey to progress things forward, really. So it's a very positive outcome. And in regard, and to summarise, the overarching question is, how are we on health and safety then? I think it's a very positive feedback because everybody's looking in that direction.
we're all willing to embrace it and move forward with it.
That's brilliant, and that's helpful. And I mean, you know, one of the key things I've certainly taken from yours and Parker's report on page 32, 33 is indeed the commitment of SLP or BLT, whatever. Sorry, I can't quite remember what we call the executive group here. Aileen, I can never remember any council I work with. You know, the personal commitment that's like, it's good over the nasty nonsense, I think, is which is really superb. But I think what I'm wanting to reflect here is I'm glad you're saying the status we're positive, we want to do well, but you also said we aren't mature. So we've got a good base to go forward on. I would just like to invite you to think about how can you better represent, it's not a problem. I'm trying to be very careful about my words. I would like to know where we're going. What is the end point? Because when we get to that, I'd like to suggest we need to test that externally. Not because I disagree with you, but as a risk committee. We can get by, well, we know what it's like now, don't we? With slides, you know, there's a risk. So I think what I'm looking for here is what is that direction of the signpost, so we know where we're all going on. With some efforts, so we're rowing together. But actually, what that is, and I think that would be very helpful from a risk governance perspective in terms of this area.
Through the chair, I'd like to also comment that in terms of commitment from the leadership team, we know that we have a system, a current health and safety system that needs updating and renewed. We need a new system, which we haven't got. And at the last operational leadership team meeting, they approved unanimously that we need the new system, and it's been approved for placing into this into the organisation. So the commitment's there, and we're now building on our tools in terms of health and safety. So,
Brilliant, thank you.
Yes, just sort of following on your general comments. Have you seen anything that causes you concerns with any of our key contractors and their health and safety practices and policy? Are there any sort of obvious red flags with any of the contractors that are concerning you?
I wonder, sorry, I'd like to ask this in PX.
Sorry?
I'd like this to be asked in PX. Peter,
Yes.
I don't have trouble with the question, but we are talking about we're risking talking about individual contractors.
Right.
And I think at this point, in terms of generality, I would rather deal with this in terms of systems, and I want to reflect that what Will has told us is that he wanted to do one, but internally we didn't have the maturity to handle or do that. That's a red flag. So that's why I'm inviting what is a process to improve, but I would be prepared to engage with that question on PX if it comes to individual questions and carefully before we. So it's a good question, if I can be honest, but not yet. Sorry, not at this point in the meeting. Any other questions, folks would like? Yes, Mark.
Yes, so just looking at the major incident summary and the one about a member of the public being on uneasy profile. And I know in the past we have policy, I believe, that if it's greater than 30 millimetres, it's fixed within 48 hours, and less than 30, it's fixed within a month. I do love that clock.
The same thing, keep moving.
Whenever I've raised it in the past, and the comments seems to be from operations staff, well, if we wanted to change those times down, it would mean changing the level of service and it would cost more money, etc., etc. But I just wanted to know, you might not know the answer to this, is that similar to what other councils do? Are we talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it fixed sooner? Are the falls happening, between 10 and 30? Or I just want to, and maybe someone could get back to me later about it rather than spend 20 minutes on it now. But it does just concern me, because I know of cases where cobblestones and footpath can stay unfixed for 3 or 4 weeks when they get fixed. And I think that it was just being done, within that just within that time period rather than actually being really proactive. So that might be a question that someone could get back to me later.
I can answer the first question, and it's exactly what other councils do.
Okay.
Not sure if the thresholds are the same, but it's exactly the same way it's treated in councils.
And through the chair, we can't answer that on behalf of, I mean, that's probably an operational.
I feel like it's a Bruce question.
It's a best question.
I like. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, sorry, one of the cues. I don't know. I'll just ask this and leave it open to come back later if that's appropriate. I'm just wondering if Paco and Will, you are comfortable that there is a direct pathway between somebody in the public identifying a problem and reporting it, and that getting through into Will's area, the health and safety, quickly and efficiently, so that it can be acted on if it is seen as an immediate risk or a danger to the public. And I'll give you a specific example that triggered this is the huge rock that came down on Bluff Road between Matarangi and Kuatunu the other day. It's an area that's closed to the public, but that rock came down. Is there a clear, easy reporting pathway, whether it's through our RFS, that gets to your attention, or is that something that still needs to be?
Through the chair, that is, that wouldn't necessarily come through to health and safety team per se. It would be dealt with through the RFS system. In terms of that though, our new proposed system that we're looking to adopt, we might look to piggyback off that sort of level of information. But really, yes, yeah, I think that's what I can say on that. I think that that's consideration in terms of the new system that we adopt, that potentially we could include more of those sorts of
Some cases.
Sorry, I wonder if I can, just because I'm conscious of time, I can see workshops all over the place. But I actually wonder whether this is an area of understanding for us, particularly, I stress this as governance part, that we might, well, invaluable what you've shared with us this morning. May well be useful, but we'll perhaps take it on board. Because actually what I'm hearing here is, so how does health and safety influence the operational work that we do? Because it goes back to what we talked about before with your contract management internal audit. There is actually a health and safety aspect, as we've just talked about in this part of this meeting. So we might sort of think it on through, but I would like to move on. If that's okay, because that's part of the operational question for Bruce and the team. Do they and how do they have the culture and health safety within their work actions if something like that ends up on the road? Can I move to the recommendations, please? Which is that we receive the report. And thank you, Will, for being it's great. I hope you can come to the other next meetings as well. Join me in a second, please. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rika. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carry. Thank you. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you. Get that. Welcome to the table, Carl. Thank you, Don. So lead us off, please, on the mission.
Sure. So through the chair, this report is presenting Audit New Zealand's management report, which is their findings of the work that they completed on our financial statements and the 21-22 audit. Yeah.
So we're dealing here at the stage with the audit passed and the year passed of 30 June 2022, not the current year or the current bill. So it's reports on any comments you'd like to make quickly, Carl?
Everybody. It seems to be recently completed audit about that period long time ago. I think we do understand the audit is a very invasive process, and lots of things have happened with council in the year. Things have been postponed and repostponed, largely to accommodate audits. So I think thank you to Donna and the team for that. We knew the audit was going to be a challenging one with the time frame and what everything else that council was up against with the weather related events. So I think what we got in the end in the report, a really good result. There's nothing that really shouts out that things are broken or were broken in the previous year. There are areas for improvement that we've highlighted. Once we've done the audit plan for the next year, there's possibly some areas to look at for the next, for this coming year on, we can try and save some time for us to prepare for next upcoming audits.
Thanks, Carl, appreciate that. This is a clear report. Two questions from me to Carl about last year's audit. The new members, obviously, you weren't here. But it does give you a small insight into some of the results, well, obviously the results from Carl's work and external eyes over our external accountability and indeed some comments on performance and so on. Gary, I get the hand up. Sorry, mate, I may have missed you. It's about the annual report, please, question.
Yeah, it's quiet in the background here, I can tell you. Yeah, so thank you, Carl, for your report. Yeah, I'd just like to highlight the comment on page 42 of performance information complaint measure around the RSS, the request for service system. And you certainly identified that complaints received for a single event must be counted separately. We've found that through the levels of service for the stormwater that the actuals versus what's reported is way out of kilter. So getting that right, I think, would be a big help to give some accurate figures for council when we're going through, especially events and situations where reporting is not actually happened on the day, but happens following the event often. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Terry. Yes, John.
I was just going to ask a question of the CEO, just for clarification. So we were talking about this the other day, I think, Aileen, and we know there's a problem with the RFS, but when we get that link completed, the tail on the dog, so to speak, is that going to fix this?
So, well, I'd like to just raise two issues in respect to this. The first one is that during the storm events, we would get hundreds of requests for service for the same issue. And so decisions in the midst of the storm are, do I make 100 phone calls to respond to this, or do I get it fixed and move on to the next one?
Yeah.
So I make no apology for during the events, hundreds of people not getting a phone call back on the one issue that got fixed, because our staff were under huge duress, and you've seen the RFS figures that came through about just our inability to actually respond to every one of them, let alone phone everybody back. So when we're in that emergency situation, people are not going to get responses. We're going to prioritise fixing to responding to 100 people.
No apology needed.
But the second part is that the RFS system needs some work at the back end, and I've got some stuff coming to council next week in the CEO's report that talks about the RFS process, and rather than me parrot what I've been told and get it wrong, I'll get Lorna to speak to you next week about what we need to do at that back end of the RFS process to close it, so that there is a response back again.
Yeah, that's nice and tidy. Yep.
Question. Yeah, John.
The refundable, the first one was the urgent one, that's fine, we looked at that. The refundable deposits and bonds, does that relate to the development contributions and things, Donna? What are we missing there? What money are we not handing back?
So through the chair, my understanding of this one is it's really historical stuff. So we have we've taken, in the past bonds for different programs of work. We've also take bonds for like hall hire.
Yep.
Things like that.
Yep.
Sometimes we've been unable to refund them because the people have disappeared, or the bank account that they've given us isn't correct. There's so many different aspects of it, and there's a whole lot of work that hasn't been a priority for us, but it is a priority. It's work that they're going to now put into place, and that is to actually go through and review them. There's hundreds of them, and some of them have date back, like 1994 or back further. So there's quite a big piece of work that needs to be done to actually go through those and work out, like there's statutory timeframes on a lot of them as well, that we can actually get them off get them off our bond register and the deposit
Wow.
register. So it's a big piece of work for lots of little things.
Okay, so it's not the big development contributions because people will be following those. It's the rats and mice for the bonds.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, so what happens from an audit point of view, if you go back to 1994 for a $50 whole bond and we can't return it?
Through you, Chair. I think we ended up in this situation last year.
Yeah.
We said we couldn't find them, but if we look at the overall error, because we look at how many we test on a very rough basis, how many we couldn't find, and see whether if we extrapolate it over the population would be material. In this case, it wasn't. So I mean, it's just an area for improvement at this stage, tidying up the records.
So what you're asking for, Carl, is us to get our processes better, not so much worried about the 1994. Sweet.
And I would suspect that, from I hear the point about time, we do that on a risk basis for the best.
Yeah.
Rather than spend the rats and mice, but I think it's going to be a pragmatic decision probably over $190 to $50.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there need to be, because the cost of going back, it's going to be too much.
So we will, the critical thing is, and I think it's through the Parker, it's through your work with his assurance report, so you just to reflect. It's quite rightly raising, we call it a risk, a financial risk for us. We've got money in our bank account which might not be ours. That's what that really means.
It does.
But it could be ours actually, we don't know. So it'll be picked up in Carl's improvement register, which he reports back at each quarter. So I hear the need to try and find some resources, Donna. So we'll monitor and we'll see where it gets to.
Thank you.
Yes, Lee.
Two quick ones, Carl. Thank you for the work in here. On page 44, you note that there's been an improvement in delivery of information. First question, are you comfortable that we're tracking in the right direction and things are heading where you want to see them? And second question, 2023 audit. We know 2022 was very late and understandably since why. Are we back on track for 2023?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think the team is on top of it when at full strength. They have been hampered by the weather-related events. For year-end audit, we have loaded the information request as far ahead as possible. The team is currently here. The interim audits so far, so good. We've made good progress. I'm very happy with where the team are. In fact, I'm so happy I want to give them more work to do to bring some work forward. So I think in general, yes, there were elements I think that I discussed about possibly, council could chip away at the burden for the year in order to, start looking at the annual report, start updating the financial statements, rolling that forward for the current year, updating the notes for the relevant issues before we get to the numbers. Because if we combine getting the numbers right and getting the wordy bits right, that's when you start feeling the pressure. So that's possibly an area for Don and the team to look at. Performance information, the service performance reporting side of things, look at what's going in there, the report on flooding and impacted measures, start thinking about it now, not when you have to do it. What is the story going to be like? And the typical slip up that we normally see in the annual report measures is we bring in the fourth quarter report and the reasons as for that quarter where the annual report needs to reflect the period for the whole year. So yes, and then there's some areas for improvement. And then while we speak about this, I know it's unpopular and people never ever want to hear it. But if there are instances where we know that, like where the CEO said that the RFS or the numbers, we know the numbers aren't right in specific areas and performance information. If we know they're not right, we can possibly looking at being proactive and qualifying those measures with the right wording around it. So that will reduce the work that the audit team has to do and the burden on staff to respond to the audit team in those areas. I'm just putting it out there. Thames Garden Manual was severely affected by the flooding events, and it's time to think out of the box.
Thank you. Can we move to the recommendation, which I don't see the conflict is. Thank you. the recommendation that we received.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, John. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Well, thank you for your question. It does get us to the next piece of paper as well, which is really useful. Donna, first to you, and then how can you put comments around the plan for the current year? So this is the annual report that will be produced for the year ending 30 June. About what is it? Okay, it's not. Donna, would you like to lead off on?
So that was basically saying what we've talked about is obviously the last annual report. This is the up and coming one. And this is the draft audit plan that Audit New Zealand are presenting to us, showing us what the risk, audit risk and issues are. Talks a little bit about the audit process and how they're going to report, the logistics of their timing of when the audit's going to be and what their expectations are of us. And I think this is also an opportunity, isn't it, Carl, if there's anything that we can discuss with you that we think that we would like you to look at further. With the sort of plan before we finalise it.
Joel, any comments here?
Thank you, through the chair. I think there's certain elements of the audit plan. So firstly, to note, there's no extension this year. So we need to be bang on to be done by the 31st of October. And I know all the faces are looking at me saying, you told us you don't have people and resources for the last 2 years. The board has been closed. What have you done? Pleased to announce that we've got all our resourcing full. We've in fact in a position where we've never been as big as we are now.
As you're using AI.
Good old, what do they call it, auditors, skepticism. And, some grunt work on the ground, you know, of ticking and bashing and looking at actual documents to do the work. So I think the burden is going to be both ways. To be ready for the audit, we're starting at the end of August, looking at working through September, so making sure that the team this side is ready, that we're ready and working as efficiently as possible. And that was why I just mentioned that the team can probably start on bringing some work forward now within the next week to make sure that it reduces the burden on next year. In terms of areas of risks, there's some of them you will see and remember from late last year, the members that were here, management override, that they can always, they're just looking in general, you know, if there are collusion and things, people work together, there's a potential for fraud. So through our work, we look at that, see what management processes are in that regard. Certain things, the way we do our audit. The valuations of roading and city waters, that building remains a significant area of focus and an area of a lot of work that we do because of the numbers involved and the uncertainty involved in this area. It takes up a lot of our audit time. Then with these things that audit council needs to do at year end, fair value of property and plant and equipment, that to say things that are value. Do we think that they are fairly represented in terms of their value in the books, or there's any indicators that they could give in the statement? The same with impairment. Has anything happened to our assets? The related events come to mind. Yes. Do we need to adjust those asset values in the books? And there's different ways, and I've got a meeting set up with Bruce to talk through this to see how councillors, what assets have council identified, what are the different categories that these different assets fall into, because depending on what you can do with the asset will depend on how you should treat the accounting for the year, which should be a big focus for us for this year. Three Waters reform, so you know, it's at this stage of watching, you know, see what's happening in government for us. And it's highly probable that we'll include an emphasis of matter paragraph around that uncertainty and how it affects council in the audit opinion. The one to note is drinking water quality performance measures. So in the past, there was drinking water quality standards. Now there's drinking water quality assurance rules. So for the drinking standards, there was clear defined measures that council needed to report against. Last year, council got an independent assurance provider to report on the category 4 and 5 drinking water standards and how each of the towns complied with that. This year, there currently isn't a similar reporting requirement, or the measures aren't clear according to the new rules. And that's something that council needs to take up with DIA to see what the expectation is, because we expect something to be reported, but we're not sure what. Then we've also got the new accounting standard, FRS 48 on service reporting. And so the purpose of this standard is to establish principles and requirements for an entity to present its service performance information that's useful and accountable, and decision-making purposes. So, and what we want to see here is it links to link up with, where it now, sorry, I don't want to get it correct. Disclosed judgments that have made the most significant effect on the selection and measurement and aggregation and presentation of service performance information according to the standards. And I think also looking forward, linking that to the well-being motives of council. So bringing that all back. So we'll look at that. That's the new standard that we're going to look at, and firstly, council needs to report it. Then the big one for us for this year is the recent adverse weather events. So it's got two legs that you need to account for. The one is on the performance story, how it's impacted council. You know, what's the impact on some of the measures? What's the impact if there were any events? How are you going to report on that? And has any other levels of services been affected? And then there's the accounting side of things, where it gets quite complex, because there's a number of things that have happened in council. There's additional funding being thrown at council. Some of the funding just passes through. Council keeps some of the funding. How do we account for this? How do we present this in our financial statements? So we're busy having a look at the technical guidance council got, and we're working through the numbers with council. But then there's also the asset side of things. So when you get to repair the assets, a certain amount of money will be spent just clearing up, making roads, making things accessible. You'd expect that money to be expensed through the income statement. But when you start repairing, rebuilding, replacing assets, that's where you need to look at, firstly, you're going to capitalize that money, but you can't double count that. So you can't keep the existing asset in your book. So you've got to see how you're going to impair or write off those assets. So quite a bit of work, you know, to do the right thing, which is going to take a lot of time for council to also get right. And then the performance information, we've included what is our materiality. So our materiality is to get back to John's question. So that's when we start getting excited about things. If it goes about those materiality amounts, that's where we want to see changes. The smaller amount that we quote for the clearly trivial threshold is if we see stuff underneath there, we talk to management about it, but we won't necessarily raise them in our audit report.
So Bruce, I just noticed that.
I was waiting for Carl to finish. You finished, Carl? Yes. Thank you, Gary. You're good for me.
Carl, this is a question. In principle, the use of artificial intelligence is something that the council could investigate to assist council operation. There's this, you know, I am aware of some councils that are doing this already. There's nothing wrong with us taking advantage of a system that will make everyone more efficient and cut their workload. So in principle, we could investigate.
Is your question, Gary, in relationship to the preparation of the annual report?
No, the preparation, I'm just saying as our auditor, you don't have a problem with us investigating the benefits of looking at using AI. Generally.
I have to admit, I'm fairly uncomfortable answering that question. As auditors are creatures of habit and look backwards. We're very good at looking backwards. I haven't been asked this question before. Yeah.
Well, it's something I'm aware of some companies are using, and it's making them so much more efficient. And I would have thought it's something we need to look at very seriously to see how it can benefit and assist us in our operation.
At the end of the day, I would say it's about accountability. It's about where the council would be comfortable. Yes, Donna.
Through the chair, I would just like to comment that that there is different varying levels of AI and artificial intelligence. We actually do use robotics for some of our processes here at council and have done for quite a few years in our IT systems. So it's not something new for us. And I guess it depends what part of AI that you're actually referring to, whether you're referring to the current chat, I always get that wrong, GPT, where, you know, the artificial intelligence is there to help write reports and stuff like that, or whether you're referring to things like we have an automated process where that helps with our accounts payable system and matching up you know, invoices, and so they get input into the system through being read without somebody sitting there actually processing them and putting them in the system. So there's varying levels.
Sure. Well, basically all of the above. I think we need to investigate what benefits we can gain from this. I'm actually aware of, through family, of some companies are just moving ahead just brilliantly with adopting the systems, and I just think we need to look at seeing what we can, how we can benefit by this, and we probably need someone to advise us on this.
Probably some AI at this table would be a good thing. We all get to replace the councillors.
Right, thank you. I just want to think of your suggestion, Gary. I'm keen that we look at what makes getting the annual report prepared in a timely fashion and audited in a timely fashion at this stage. And I think your point's an interesting one, a good one, but I'm not certain it's quite well as here in terms of the task and the point of view in front of us, Lee.
Well, just like the complaint, the system of reporting, when you a service requirement, I think that system would be ideal with the AI.
Oh, I'm not doubting your suggestion, Gary. I'm just trying to look at things what are pragmatic at the moment in terms of getting our annual report completed. Which, of course, annual report ends in 8 days' time and audited. So I'm not trying to dismiss it. I'm just trying to reflect what is the business in front of the committee right at the moment. Yes, Lee.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Carl. Obviously some of the costs involved in the work that you do have been affected by storm events, and that's the right costs in terms of council obligations. I guess question probably for Aidan, much as anything, as part of our recovery funding, is there any pathway towards getting recovery for some of that increased cost of what Carl and his team are doing through that recovery funding, or will we just have to wear it? Because we're seeing a significant increase in the cost of doing this work, and Carl's already identified that the additional work based on the storm events is
Difficult question on the face of it, no, but down in the detail potentially. That's a bit cryptic, deliberately.
The idea. Cal, can I just try and round out with probably a number of questions, if that's possible, please? Perhaps also to you, Mike. At this stage, we aren't anticipating a revaluation of roading or 3 quarters, correct? But we'll do a fair value assessment in 8 days' time.
No, we are doing revaluation. Is it 30th of June?
Oh, yeah, or roading. Roading.
Roading and 3 waters, and all of our assets except for get valued annually, except for I think it's buildings and land, or it might just be land. I can remember off the top of my head.
My apologies, that shows where and that reflects on our accounting policies. Okay, that's fine. So that's going to probably be fine. Your critical point then would be the adverse events impacts in terms of our asset base. I would presume that will be taken into account by value when they do the work, or as they are doing the work. Can I look then at page 83 of our agenda, which is actually the timeline. So when are the valuation reports going to be available, guys? It can be confirmed.
Yes, so they, as far as I'm aware, they are working on it. So everything is pushed up a little bit further now that if you recall, that we changed our valuation date from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. So that puts an awful lot more pressure that one day.
That's right.
Puts a completely different picture and a lot more pressure on staff and also on our external valuers to actually get their reports done earlier and to us earlier. So yeah, at this point, I don't have a date. I believe that it's probably July, I would say, end of July. The majority of them, some of them may be a bit longer. It just depends on our year-end process and everything as well.
Right. And then obviously, given that's yet to be confirmed, the political stage to confirm when the draft financials will be delivered. I know we've got draft financials on the 19th, sorry. Yeah.
So we're working towards we look at when the draft financials are to be delivered and then we work backwards.
The valuation report actually, obviously this comes with draft financials, so we're talking today. So Donna, this is my one chance to ask the question, really, have you got the resources in place for?
Yes, we have. We have got a full finance team. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. It's not, because they're not just focused on things that they're focused on as well. So it's going to be more difficult this year because the timeline change in the audit. So you'll be able to see that we're actually having an audit about a month earlier than what we normally have done in the past. So that's going to be quite challenging for staff to meet that timeline, but staff are well aware, and yeah, I mean, there is some risk. There is some risk, obviously, that it won't be completed, but obviously staff will be working really hard to make sure that they can meet those timelines.
You've got resources. Okay, well, and what the critical thing then is that we've got actually to be able to deliver on this, any matters that need to arise. Okay, that's cool. We've got that. Carl, I take it. I think we're yet to receive your fee proposal. When does that come?
The fee proposals are currently with the Auditor General that's looking at the.
So we hold up on ours. We received. I've got getting them out now. Is there a hold up on ours yet?
All the district councils are still in progress at the moment.
So the city yesterday. Sorry.
Yeah, there's priorities.
Okay. And I think it would be right to assume a substantial increase in fee.
It would be right, it wouldn't be right, sorry, Chair.
It would be right to assume substantial increase. There are 30, 40, 50%.
It's probably a 30 to 40% increase in the total time spent on the audit and 40% increase in the as a rough estimate.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get that. We're going to get that coming. I just note. We've discussed this in this committee before. It isn't a normal year, and I hear that from what you're saying, Donna, in terms of the pressure on you. I don't mean the adverse weather events, they just add to the problem. But actually, we get a normal start to doing this audit in a conventional way that I know you would want, Carl, or that we would want. We would normally have an engagement, an engagement is once every 2 years, but the fee proposed in the plan in March, we've only got it now, we've even got the fee. Some sense of signing up a contract without knowing what it is. So we are where we are, but I just want to reflect that we will need to receive and deal with that fee. I assume it's coming pretty soon. You have any sense when it's coming? Okay. So I've got a few people lined up here. We're going to round take a Rick, I think Peter, then Terry, and then John.
So we have a fee increase in this document? Is that not the fee increase that we're talking about? Right, okay.
The range.
From 2, so that Okay, that figure's not the figure then.
No,
Right.
indication.
Okay, thank you.
Probably if I have to put a number on between $30,000 and $40,000. No, $50,000 increase on the water fee from last year.
I think it's 225.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lee.
sorry, okay.
No,
Thank you.
that's
Thank you for
fine.
clarifying.
Yeah.
My question was, what have we budgeted?
We haven't budgeted for that big an increase. We've budgeted for the normal increase in inflation that we do when we prepare our budgets, because unless we're notified otherwise, and in time, but the annual plan, as you know, is finalised and getting adopted next week.
Gary?
Yes, I'd just like to say thanks to Carl and for the work he puts into this. I think this is one of our most important documents that we read. It's our a voice of experience at telling us how we're going, how we're matched. So I'd support the increase in fees. This is one of the key parts of our business, to have somebody scope it and look over it and give it the right input and comments that we can work on. So I just like to vote a thanks for Carl and the effort he does for this. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. John?
Yeah, look, Carl, don't take this personally. I enjoy your company and your reports are great, but that is a shocking increase. And I know the audit office said they'd keep it down during COVID and be moderate and stuff, but hell's bells. And we have no choice, do we? We have to employ Audit New Zealand. We are bound by legislation to do so. Bruce?
We have the Auditor General as our auditor.
And that's it.
Audit New Zealand.
No competition.
Provide.
Because to me, and Carl, I like your company. I really do.
Carl. Typically, the Auditor General sets the fees.
Yeah, I've never ever taken it, Carl, but I couldn't sit here and accept a 40% increase without saying, I think that's bloody outrageous. And yeah, but we'll pay it. Sorry, Bruce.
Can I just reflect at this stage? We haven't got the fee proposal.
No, but we've had indications.
Strong indication, and I've directed Carl has been in front of us telling us that prepare yourself.
Yeah.
There are options, but there are limited options.
Sorry, what was that?
There are options. But
there are.
We can negotiate.
Exactly.
We haven't got the fees.
Yeah.
So we'll have to deal with that at a later stage.
Which
will be it's going to be between meetings. That's all.
How do you negotiate, Bruce? Just for my clarity, with one person.
Tell you over smoke.
Okay, mate.
I don't use the word smoke. That's fun.
But I mean.
All right.
Sorry. I mean, just to put that in context, the OAG has said that the number of hours hasn't kept pace with what the professional requirements are for these audits. So, once again, and councillors Clay and Fox would regularly bring this up. There's another example of government saying, oh, you've got to do more things, but,
you'll pay for it.
You're not getting any more money to do it. So once again, we get that.
Right, thank you. We are dealing here with the plan.
So sorry, can I just ask a question?
Gary, I didn't see your hand up. Go for it, Gary.
That's right. Carl, as you know, in the last couple of years, I did raise matters, tried to raise a complaint about what was happening in the council with our then chief executive, and you people were conflicted. And I just find quite uncomfortable that you say there's no other choice we can use for auditing, because when something arises and we go to the Auditor General's office, you all run for cover and say we're in conflict. So I just find that quite unacceptable. So there's no one else we can use.
I don't think your independence is impaired anyway. Is it okay?
No,
You said that in your opinion, so something's changed in the last 12 months.
No, it's nothing. These are independence.
So, thank you. Let's go to can we go to the, Terry, have you got another question off your hand in, or just back up? I think it's, yes, back out.
No, sorry, I just hadn't dropped it down, sorry.
That's okay. It's one where we've got, thank you, Don, the correction, which is the Risk and Assurance Committee receives the draft annual plan I don't know, we need to pass the motion until we don't have any comment other than what we're seeing and acknowledging that's the process. I'll move that from chair to have a second, please. Thank you, Rika. Is there any debate on the motion? Being none, I'll motion all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, can we have
Probably just 2 more minutes of your time having a forward look and a notes ahead before the LTP. Our focus will still remain on what you know about your assets, your capability to deliver on that, thoroughly looking at the CD and any climate change or what do they call it? The emissions reportings, if you're going to do anything on that, so we'll have a look at those when going forward.
Thank you.
And from everything that I take, I tell you, if there's anything I'll remember is that comment today as I drive back. Thank you.
And reflect on that, Carl. We will expect performance, but that's because we do value the work that you give us. That is important. We hear your results, but it's got to be at the right time.
Yep.
Can I suggest we can take a break? We are a quarter of an hour late, but I think we need a quarter of an hour break. So can we use that sharp at 11, please? And keep pushing on. Thank you.